Hello. Welcome back, friends, to Alpha Beta Soup, where we unpack Bitcoin using on-chain analysis. I'm TXMC. Well, it's been a few days since we spoke, and we've got a few things we can talk about. We'll look at the Bitcoin price chart together. We'll look at the derivatives space. We'll see if we got a test of the liquidation low that we've been discussing for the last few weeks on this channel. We'll also bounce around at the on-chain space and see if there's any signal there. All of that is coming up. And later, I'd like to talk about some of the things on my mind recently, particularly as it relates to this channel. Some of the challenges I've experienced as I've gone through this journey, and it's important for me to share those with you as my viewers, because I want you to know how committed I am to making this channel a success. I believe this channel has the potential to be the #1 place on YouTube for on-chain and Bitcoin analysis. I believe that I can be the best, and I want you to know what I've been thinking about and going through in the last few weeks and months, because it's been at the top of my mind, and I feel it's right to share it with you. If my voice sounds a bit hoarse today, please excuse me. I caught the Omicron last week, and I'm on the tail end of it now. Rest assured, I'm doing okay. If you enjoy my content, make sure to give my video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. If you enable the bell icon, you'll be alerted to all of my videos the moment they come out. I really appreciate your support. But I've rambled on for long enough, so let's get to the meat of it. Well, friends, the last time we spoke, price was right around here, and we were wondering if we would get a test of this liquidation low. Well, it seems that we got that kind of price action. And if you're not a regular viewer of this channel, you may wonder what I'm talking about. Well, I'll leave a link down below for you to check out our deep dive of this several videos ago. But the long and short of it is, after Bitcoin has major liquidations, which occur in the futures market, price tends to bounce around and eventually test the low of the liquidation wick within a few weeks of that event occurring. Usually there are 1 or 2 tests before price moves to a new area. In May, that price zone was further down. And after a huge liquidation sent us below $30,000, this was a major red day, like a $10,000 red candle. Well, we bounced around, tested the liquidation low a few times, and then a short squeeze helped propel us out of the July lows. Here on September 7th, another event like that. This was the day El Salvador made Bitcoin legal tender. Big liquidation, sideways chop, a couple of tests, a little bit of uncertainty, and then by the end of the month, we had found it as support. And this helped propel a big rally to begin October. Well, the last time we spoke, price was right here, and we were looking at a buildup of open interest in the futures market that was making us suspect we could see volatility incoming. Well, we did get a little volatility. January 5th saw quite a swift downside move, and that helped catalyze the proper test of the liquidation low. And we've seen a nice recovery for price here in the short term. One thing I find encouraging about this move up close is this strong wick that you see that came in on the low that broke under 40,000. Let me go to an intraday chart. Take off my drawings. Fix this up a little bit here. Okay, check this out. Look at this buying volume that stepped in right at the low wick that went underneath 40,000 right here. Strong demand stepped in at a key level, a big round 5-digit number right here at 40K. And the great thing about this as well is that, we suspected that there was a good chance that we had a bunch of traders with stops right underneath this level, because this was a big liquidation. And then we also had 40,000 right here, and I suspected there were even more traders just underneath that level. And it could have gone either way. One possibility is price makes its way down here, a bunch of people get liquidated, and it becomes ugly very fast. But another scenario is that traders in this zone step in and bid it back up. Perhaps this is a value buy. Perhaps this is the floor of price. Well, those things can't really be known until price tests it, like we just saw. And based on this behavior right here, this wick and this strong buying volume, it looks like, for the time being at least, we may have found a temporary floor. Obviously, this could go wrong. We could have a quick burst of short interest that gives us a downside move, and before you know it, we're back below this level. That could easily play out. But when you see a candle like this right here on high volume at a very important price right there at 40,000, and here with this liquidation wick just above. This gives me some confidence. It's making me feel pretty good here in the micro term, in the very near term. But I'm not trading this. You know, I did get a couple of orders in here in the low 40s. I was buying during this liquidation for my long-term holdings of Bitcoin. But I don't look for trading entries here. I'm just a student of markets. There's some interesting price action that occurred here in this level. You know, when we box in this liquidation zone and then we mark off kind of what the median line would be, you can really see how price managed to work its way through this zone really nicely, right? We had the liquidation all the way down. We come back up and we close in this area, right about halfway between the top and the bottom of this range. And then over the next few days and weeks, price makes its way up to the top of the range. That place is rejected. There's not enough buy demand, not enough bid support to get us out of this range. What happens then? We work our way back down to the median line, bounce around a bit, test it as support several times, and then we get a little momentum. We start working our way back up to the top of the range. We test it once. It's not ready. We come back up. We test it again. It's not ready. What happens? Price just works its way back down to the middle of the range. Now, when you see this playing out, let's say that you are right here and you see this playing out. We've got this bottom of the range. We've got this top of the range. We know that historically, price likes to visit the low of liquidation wicks. All this stuff is playing out. We've been rejected at the top of the range 1, 2, 3 times. And then all of a sudden, you're sitting here and it's January 2nd. What do you think is the most likely outcome? If you guessed a visit to the range low, you are correct. We've come down, we have tested it numerous times. Strong bid support stepped in here and created a clean wick back over 40,000. And now we are in the range working our way towards the median once more. This is mean reversion at work. This is classic price action, seeking the equilibrium between the risk and reward of all of the market participants that got in up here, got sucked down in this liquidation, bought down here, and found themselves at $47,000. Price needed to find out where the floor is. Is the floor 42K? Is it lower? Is the floor up here? All these levels, in a way, need to be battle tested. And once the market gets a chance to test a level, if you see bidders stepping in and you get a quick reversal, that kind of move informs everyone in the market about that level moving forward. So we got the test of the liquidation low, and along the way we got the test of the liquidation high a couple of times, and price just wasn't quite ready to get out of this range. It made sense after seeing 2 or 3 of these and seeing a nice bounce along the median line here that we would eventually find our way down to the lower end of the range. It's also really encouraging that we saw this big wick stepping in here at 40,000. That indicates bid support, and that indicates the perception of value in this $40,000 range. That's a positive for price action in the short to medium term, I would say. But when I look at this box here with this middle line and I see price testing the high and coming back to the middle, testing the high, coming back to the middle, now testing the low, it makes me think about Bitcoin's price over the past year. Go to our daily chart here. Let me slap a fib on so we can mark out our levels. Okay, so we've got the high of the range, we've got the low of the range, we've got our median line. And what do you see here? What is similar to what we were just reviewing about this liquidation range, right? We established a high, we then established a low, we have a middle, and we're now range hunting, right? We come up, we hover in here for a while, we go to the top, we test it, not ready, not ready. We meander down and now we're in the middle again. And here we've shown some weakness. Now we're down into the bottom half of the range. One could argue that we would just find ourselves all the way back down here to the bottom, but I think the market has a little more strength in it at this time. It's also really great if I flip this over to a weekly chart here. It's nice to see that we were able to hold this level, something I've marked out here, and you can see it's been a significant area of support, and it's really great to see that price has now reclaimed the top of this area and is moving away from it. So I think that a retest of the bottom of this range here for the time being is less likely. Based on the way that we recovered from this test, the way that we saw strong bid support at 40K, and that we've now reclaimed this range here, I'm starting to feel good that the chances of us heading back towards a test of the upper end of the range is more likely at this point than the opposite. But I'm just really laying out possibilities because, in all honesty, friends, I don't have a clear picture of where I think the market is headed in the next week or two. Here's a quick look at Coinalyze. We've got the price chart up at the top. Down here underneath price, we've got open interest. So this is the total value of all open contracts in futures here on the Binance Perpetual Future. Below this version of open interest is stablecoin margined open interest. So this is the side of OI that's margined specifically with stablecoins. Binance uses Tether. And we've been looking at stablecoin OI because it's been the source of all this growth in OI in the last few weeks. Oh, look at this interesting wick here. That's kind of a funny wick, isn't it? And if I switch to a 4-hour chart and we start to look at this here, here's our test of the wick. And one fear that a lot of people had about the futures buildup, about all this OI, is that we possibly had a bunch of longs in the market. Well, I figure if we had a bunch of longs, this test of the low, including going below 40K, should have created a series of liquidations, but it didn't. And if I zoom in here, it looks like open interest actually rose on the candle that we got the wick below 40K. So whatever's going on at Binance is very curious. There's clearly not a singular bias amongst all of the traders there. There's some shorts, there are some longs. I think recently, though, we're starting to get a hint that the shorts are dominating. And why do I say that? Well, we finally started to see the funding rate dipping below positive. Now, for weeks, the aggregate funding rate has been stuck at essentially neutral based on some of the way that Binance calculates their funding rate. And it made it hard to discern just how prominent the short bias was in futures. But now we're seeing the funding rate dipping into the negative, while OI is staying elevated at the lows. I think it's obvious now there's a healthy appetite of shorts in this market right now. They're currently paying a premium to keep their positions open, and OI is jacked to the moon. So I feel like there's a very clear environment that is friendly to a short squeeze. But what would need to happen is price would need to get clearly out of this range here. It would be nice if we actually got up and started to create new highs for 2022, 46, 47,000, then we're really talking. But if we continue to languish here in the lower half of this price range through the end of January, then it's going to continue being very difficult from day to day to get a clear reading on where we think the market's going. Some of you may notice that I haven't mentioned Onchain yet. And part of that is because the activity that's going on Chain right now is very muted. It's very quiet. We're seeing predominantly accumulation behavior going on Chain. If we check in here with long-term holders, these are people who bought their coins at least 5 months ago, and they've been holding on to them long enough that they're statistically unlikely to spend them on a given day. The longer you hold your Bitcoin, the easier it is to continue holding your Bitcoin. And we see this in the data. After a multi-week period of distribution for long-term holders following the all-time high in November, they've now started net accumulating again. You see this little green pocket here? If I zoom in, you'll probably get a look at it. Look at that. Here we are. We created a second all-time high not that long ago. We've pulled back considerably from that all-time high. Rather than panic, rather than give in to FUD or decide to rotate into some shitcoin, long-term holders have just continued accumulating corn into their aggregate supply. And if we look up here at the slope of their supply, it's slowly curling back up, ever so gently. This group tends not to spend very much into weakness. There was a little distribution here in March of 2020. That's the latest example in recent history of them spending into weakness. By and large, they like to spend at the highs, and I anticipate this group will be a reliable hodler until price finds strength again. So we have this clear accumulation behavior going on by long-term holders. That's great to see, and it fits within our expectations of what this group would be doing here. And, I'd love to tell you that long-term holders stacking means XYZ for the price. But the truth is that Onchain is not going to tell us what happens to the market over the next month or two. It can tell us a lot about Bitcoin. And sometimes there just isn't a clear signal from the market. We've got all these inputs. We've got all these data points showing us what these different investors are doing with what's going on in the futures market, with the funding rate and with open interest. We've got our price chart over here and all the history of Bitcoin. We've got all these different inputs and things that we can consider. But at the end of the day, we're still stuck in the middle of the price range that we have been in for a calendar year. We are still waiting for a resolution to the epic buildup of open interest in futures, which will continue to grow over time as the derivatives market expands. But one should still reasonably assume that we would see a deleveraging of these traders in here who have opened their positions very recently, and we have not yet seen that resolution. So I would love to be able to tell you guys that I've got the secret, that I know what the market's going to do, but there is no clear signal. And I don't feel like anyone has a clear idea of what's going to happen over the next few weeks. Sometimes it's more obvious than other times. And right now, it really feels like a moment to be patient and wait for the market itself to show us what it wants to do. You know, it's really easy to feel like you need to bring in all these inputs, all this on-chain data, all this derivatives data, all this market intelligence. We're looking at sentiment. We've got the fear and greed index. I'm on Twitter checking out hashtags. There's sometimes this feeling that we've got to consider all of this wealth of data available to us. But I think that it's also just as easy to get lost in noise, to think that there is signal where there isn't. Sometimes the best signal comes from looking at the market itself. Just look at what it's trying to show you, that there isn't a clear trend, that we're in a precarious spot, hanging out above key support, in the middle of a liquidation range that we've been in for over a month now. And we can say with some confidence that we think there are some shorts in this market because we've got this big buildup of OI. We've got this negative funding rate finally after weeks and weeks and weeks of knowing that there were shorts here but not being able to prove it. And I think right now the best thing to do is to simply be patient. There's something that I want to say that's been on my mind recently. You know, this channel has very quickly become extremely important to me. I just discovered Bitcoin's importance and really began to understand it a little over a year ago. And I really began learning about Onchain less than a year ago. Everything that's happened since then, with joining Twitter, with deciding to start making videos on YouTube, with getting offered a job at Glassnode, with meeting so many wonderful people in the community, all of this has happened at lightning speed for me. When I created this channel, I didn't even have a clear vision for what I wanted it to be. I've just been winging it the whole time. And at the same time, I'm also still very much learning. I'm learning about Onchain. I'm learning about Bitcoin. I'm also trying to learn about macro, learn about markets more broadly, and be able to incorporate more knowledge and more experience into my assessments. Through this process, I've found that I've begun putting a pressure on myself to try to deliver an amazing insight every time I produce a video. And being completely honest with you and with myself, that's simply not realistic. But I've placed that pressure on myself. If you don't watch that, if you don't pay attention to the expectations you're putting on your own self, you can find that you're draining yourself of energy by applying an invisible pressure. And I've noticed that that's what I've been doing recently. It comes from a place of wanting to produce amazing content. I want this to be the absolute fucking best channel on YouTube. And I now help make the Glassnode videos, the Week Onchain videos. They just started having me help them make those, and I'm very honored to be a part of that, and I'm excited to be a part of it. Those videos are different from these. I don't get to express my personal analysis in the Glassnode videos. That's what this channel is for. But now that I'm working at both of them, it's been tough trying to balance my creative energy and the amount of time I put into each thing. I think in some ways I'm being unrealistic with myself when I sit down in the morning to produce a video for you guys. I want so much to bring you the absolute best, to show you how much work I've put into this, how much time I think about it, how much effort goes in to making sure that I'm accurate and clear and concise and insightful. But at the same time, I've been applying unhealthy pressure to myself. And I'm committing to you that I want to find a balance. I will find a way to continue making this the absolute best on-chain and Bitcoin analysis channel on YouTube. I want to be the best. I believe that it's possible. And for me to get there, I've got to make sure I organize my time and manage my energy output better. I've not been doing a great job of that, and that's part of the reason why my cadence of videos has been inconsistent. I don't want to feel boxed into a corner of always talking about the same on-chain charts every time we sit down together. I want to be able to mix in things that I find are important, and I pledge to continue doing that. Sometimes derivatives are far more important to look at than the on-chain data. Sometimes external factors like macro are where our energy should really be concentrated. I say all of this because I want you to understand how committed I am to making this work, to being successful. I want to make sure that this is the channel for people to come for entertainment, for information, and for education about Bitcoin and on-chain. I do plan to start doing some live streams now and then. I think it would be a great format for our community. It'd be a way for me to answer questions and we could have a little bit more of a free-flowing conversation. I do think we'll do one of those very soon, and I'll make sure to announce it beforehand so you can be ready for it. And I'm also working on some other plans for content this year that I think you guys will really like, but I'm not ready to talk about it yet. We're going to keep cranking out these videos. I want to make 2 or 3 of them a week, every week, but my timing recently has been inconsistent, so I am sorry about that, guys. Days like today, where I don't feel like I have a strong grasp on market direction, and where the data that we use, all the various inputs that we consider, are not giving a lot of clear signal, it's challenging to know what to talk about. And maybe the thing I need to talk about is just how I have no idea where the market is going in the next few days. But what I do know is that I'm going to sit back down tomorrow, I'm going to look at everything over again, and maybe I'll learn something new. That's the process that we go through. It won't be clear every day. We won't always feel confident in our ability to read the tea leaves. But what we can have confidence in is our consistency and our approach and our never give up attitude that every day we will sit down and we will better understand Bitcoin. That is my commitment, and that is what you will find every time we meet here on this channel. I know that was a long soapbox, but this is my channel, and sometimes I just want to talk to you guys about what I'm going through, especially on a day like today, where the market itself feels a bit unclear. All right, that's what I wanted to talk about today. I know that I went on a soapbox there. I've had a lot of these thoughts in my head, and I felt like the best way to get through it was just to put myself out there, to let you know what I'm going through, and how much of a challenge it's been. A fun challenge, but a challenge nonetheless, to make this channel as good as I want it to be. And while we didn't have a whole lot to say about the markets themselves today, that doesn't mean that we don't sit down every single day, look at the data, and try to make a reasonable, objective assessment of the markets. The consistency to our approach is where we will find success, and that is what we can rely on. We'll give the market a couple of days, and then we will talk again, whether there's much to newly observe or not. So until the next time we speak, be kind to one another. Take care of yourselves. Tell your family that you love them. Give your kids a hug. Call your mom. Take a walk outside. Go for a drive in the country. Do something positive for yourselves. And we'll talk in a couple days. Cheers, everyone.